So we did just discuss this off camera, and while we were having the conversation, I repeatedly said, wow, we should have recorded this as a video. So this is a little bit less spontaneous than my usual videos, because now we're coming on camera and sort of talking about it again. But this is the sort of topic where I know for a fact this will be really useful and really meaningful to a small number of people in a profound way. I mean, sometimes I do a video and it's about a topic that's of interest to thousands of people. You know, I've had videos that reach an audience of thousands, but maybe it's interesting or important to them in a shallow way. Definitely what I'm talking about here, even if it only matters to 15 people, it's going to matter profoundly a lot for years to come for those 15 people. So it's worth talking about for that reason. I'll also say, I mean, this is one of my reasons for being on YouTube in the first place. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I was really concerned that my daughter would grow up to have a romanticized view of Buddhism because she knew her father was a scholar of Buddhism. You know what I mean? That can leave a kind of impression on a kid where they're just pro-Buddhist or uncritical of Buddhism, or they assume that I would be uncritically pro-meditation or, you know, favor certain kinds of supernatural religious practices, would I be connected to Buddhism or Buddhist ethics or something. And so I really wanted to leave enough YouTube videos to show, look, kid, you know, if you're seeing this 10 years from now, your father did know a lot about Buddhism, but your father was a man who already had a sophisticated philosophy before he ever got involved with Buddhism. It's not like without Buddhism I'd have no philosophy or anything in my life. You know, well, it wasn't. I mean, some people are like that. I mean, you know, so if that's, you know, rep your set. If that's your experience, be honest about it. Some people had no philosophy in their lives before they got involved with Buddhism. For me, I already was at a very advanced level in European philosophy, ancient as well as 19th century as well as modern. And, you know, I'd already kind of, it wasn't like there was some void in my life I was trying to fill, you know what I mean? When I got involved with Buddhism, I already approached it in a self-confident and analytical way. And then I'm someone who I found a lot of value in Buddhist philosophy as a tradition, but I was never uncritical of supernatural claims or cognitive claims. I mean, that's really what it is here, because sometimes it's not magic they're claiming with meditation, but it's some kind of cognitive benefit, some kind of health benefit, some kind of self-improvement. All right. So what was the question you put to me?
Yeah, when you first got into Buddhism, did you meditate? Did you try to meditate, or did you have this opinion of it prior to trying?
So, I mean, this answer gets into the different phases of my life in which I was involved in Buddhism and how I approach these issues and how I express myself on these issues. It is definitely true that in my earliest days with Buddhism, I assumed that the nirvana experience was an experience that people had. Historically, you know, over 2,000 years ago and 500 years ago and still today. Now, I use the word experience advisedly. If you ask me, is a dream real? Well, it's a very strange question. A dream is a real dream. You know, it exists in as much as it's a dream, but there's no way you can convince me that a dream is something more than just a dream. Even if I have a dream predicting the future, and then by happenstance that event transpires, you still can't convince me that this dream has some kind of supernatural power to predict the future. Sometimes people have a dream about a car accident, and then they have a car accident. Well, people have car accidents all the time.
No, the conclusion is that they were psychic.
Right. There's, some people are going to attach other meanings onto this. And of course, how many times did you have a dream about something that didn't happen? You know, whatever. I mean, this is the problem with the way people assign meaning, sometimes religious and philosophical meaning, sometimes so-called transcendental meaning, to hallucinations, dreams, just thoughts, and altered states of mind. Okay, so it is definitely true in the early days of my involvement with Buddhism, I wasn't just open to the possibility that this was an experience, even if you call it a hallucinatory experience or a dreamlike experience, that people had again and again over a period of many centuries, and that inspired people to take on a new direction in their lives, right? So that's not conceding a lot, you know what I mean? Like, that's like saying, hey, look, there's a type of vision these people have had, and we can inquire into that, and we can talk to people about it, what have you. And now I'd say in the latter half of my engagement with Buddhism, after I really became an expert, because I was in the beginning, you know, we're all born ignorant, you know, the turning point was that no, I did not even accept that. I did not even make that concession. I do not even think there is such an experience or such a hallucination or such a dream. So that's the turning point for me. And in terms of people who talk to me face to face, from someone else's perspective, that's quite a subtle shift. So in the early days, one of the first, I think the first face-to-face debate I ever had with someone about meditation. How real is meditation? And that I'm phrasing it that way intentionally. It really is just as absurd as asking, how real is a dream? You can experience altered states of mind, you can experience hallucinations, you can experience dreams. The question of real or unreal is in many ways the wrong question to be asking, right? But I had a face-to-face debate with a guy who was a devout Buddhist layperson. He was ethnically Sinhalese. He was from Sri Lanka. He wasn't a white person. So he had grown up in Buddhism, and he became totally fluent in English, and he read advanced material, scholarship on Buddhism in English and so on. So he was a really advanced layperson. And he really excitedly was presenting me with this evidence from a scientific experiment in which people attempted to lower the crime rate in Washington, D.C. by having mass meditation, having a group of people meditate and then measuring the change in the crime statistics. And I've responded very skeptically with respectfully, but skeptically, by walking him through step by step kind of what was wrong with even how the research question was posed in this study, you know what I mean? And what did this mean for Buddhist meditation? Anyway, the Buddha didn't promise you'd lower the crime rate through meditation. What are you really claiming here? And then above all else, what really had an impact on him was, I said, why are you comparing this to doing nothing? Why are you acting as if your options are meditation or doing nothing? Why don't you compare the efficacy of this meditation to actually going out and addressing the underlying causes of crime, such as poverty, homelessness, drug addiction, or whatever the local problems, maybe unemployment, what have you.
Wouldn't that also assume that the reason that there's crime is due to people being stressed out or it's completely surreal. It relies on comic book logic. So I just say, I'll use comic book logic. I'm going to flesh that out a little bit. I remember I had an English teacher when I was in high school who said, if you just think logically, it makes sense that we see the way Superman sees. When you draw a comic book, it looks like there are beams coming out of his eyes, like his X-ray vision and his laser vision, right? But when you actually think about it, it's not that Superman would shoot X-rays out of his eyes. It's that there are X-rays going into his eyes. You know what I mean? It's logically the exact opposite of what it is. In a comic book, likewise, it's very easy to just draw lines coming out of someone's brain. I've circles going to illustrate the concept of psychic waves, telepathy, psychic waves. In a comic book, it's very easy to pick that. It's very easy for a child to understand. It's very easy for us to relate to as something real, right? I think the underlying assumption is you have a bunch of people meditating and they make magical waves, and then that, what I mean? It really is at that level, and I think that's why you can rationally challenge people's irrational beliefs. Same with what I just said about dreams and predicting the future, what have you. So I mean, meditation and the scientific claims about meditation, I never accepted. Claims about so-called mindfulness, so-called Vipassana method. And again, you have to remember, I wasn't like a secular outsider. I wasn't like a Christian criticizing these meditation practices. I was an Orthodox Theravada Buddhist criticizing those practices. So, the Mahasi Sayadaw method of meditation cannot be vindicated scripturally or doctrinally. It also cannot be vindicated scientifically. The Vipassana method, which again began with a certain enterprising businessman in Myanmar, has its own story, but it's one modern person created this method of meditation, cannot be vindicated, cannot be validated scripturally or doctrinally. It also cannot be validated scientifically, right? It has both problems. And again, I used this image in the earlier video. Modern Buddhism can be as different from ancient Buddhism as Santa Claus is different from Jesus Christ. We can describe these things as meditation, but this is not canonical meditation. This isn't what the Buddha taught. You know what I mean? This isn't what Buddhism was founded on. So that put me in a very unique and powerful position as a critic of meditation within Buddhism. And I did have the experience of seeing people break down crying when I talked about meditation to them, and I was talking about it in a respectful way. But what I was saying was devastating to their whole worldview. So this comes to one image that I already mentioned to you in our first conversation. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you ask me, do you believe in meditation, which is it's a totally rational way to phrase the question, but just like the question, do you believe in dreams, it's almost impossible to answer, if you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. One of the images I used, and again, I've seen people break down weeping over this. I've said to people in response to these issues of meditation being raised, it's quite possible for me to flex the muscles in my arm. It could be your arm, it could be your leg, but just to, as hard as you can, tighten up those muscles and hold it, flex it until it reaches the point of exhaustion. And then when it is relaxed, you're going to get a kind of tingling. You're going to get a peculiar sensation, right? And I said, simply, you can do the same thing with your mind. Your mind is not a muscle, but you can, in a sense, flex your attention span. You can, follow, there are multiple different models, there are different states of mind, and you strain to hold it still, It's natural for your mind to be moving around and be, from moment to moment, right, tense and relaxed, focused on this or focused on that, operating in this mode, operating in that mode. But just like the tension required of holding your arm in a certain state, you can remain in a hyper-alert state, focused one way or another, one type of image held in your mind, what have you. I'm not going to give examples here, but there are many different modes of meditation that have been associated with Buddhism. Again, some orthodox, some completely unorthodox. And let me tell you something. You're going to feel tingling. You're going to feel a kind of heightened state or hyper-exhausted state or both. You're going to feel unusual sensations. You're going to feel an altered state of mind. In a sense, the tingling in your arm is an altered state of your arm. You know what I mean? It's a peculiar mode of feeling and mode of being even, But it's meaningless. And in the same way that I wouldn't ascribe these cultural values, supernatural values, and religious expectations to the tingling in my arm, I wouldn't ascribe them to the tingling in my mind either. You've got to remain detached. And again, detachment is a Buddhist, virtue. And I've had people really break down even when the conversation just got to that point, where it's like, look, because they agreed, they didn't want to agree, but they knew what I was saying was true. And these are people with a lot of experience in meditating. So, and I've meditated at some of the most august and respected, Buddhist monasteries around the world, and with some famous Buddhist monks and so on, you know what I mean? So but that's maybe another reason why that image is compelling when I was saying it to other people who have that, who know that what I'm talking about, that it's not so different from tingling in your arm.
Right, they're probably just attached to the idea that it is real, right. People are attached to the idea that Santa Claus is real when they're kids.
Right, but in a sense it is real. I mean, this is the thing. The tingling in your arm is real. It's just meaningless. It's not what you want it to be. It's not anything more than what it is at the surface.
Yeah,
the surface value.
I'm just thinking about, there are people who really do ascribe some sense of reality to their dreams. Like, I dreamed this, so
right.
It's so important to me, that
Therefore,
I had this
it can't just be a dream. I've seen people respond that way if they have a dream about speaking to a deceased relative.
Yes.
So they dream about speaking with their deceased mother or something,
totally.
And then they say, well, it can't just be a dream. It was so meaningful. Mm-hmm. Well, what if it's just a dream and you like it? You want it to be something more than a dream. What if it's a dream plus wishful thinking, right?
Yeah, and I've known people who have had LSD experiences that, they say it changed their life. Sure. But it's,
cocaine too. I'm sorry, it's alcohol, cocaine, all of them lead to altered states of mind. But sure, there are people who've gotten drunk and a whole bunch of other things happened that night and changed their life. Sure, no doubt. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it changes their lives, but that doesn't mean, it is.
It doesn't mean that God lives in a bottle of whiskey. It doesn't mean that God is at the bottom of a tab of LSD or something. It doesn't mean that God or some other religious meaning is hiding within these things. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, there are actually several steps further I can take that discussion that starts with the image of tingling and straining your arms, straining your brain. But I mean, I don't think we have to in this video. But I just mentioned that kind of conversation with people who were really attached to meditation has often been devastating for them. Even though you can tell what I'm saying is not really dismissing meditation entirely, but you don't even have to take it that way. It's like, well, there are physical exercises and there are mental exercises. That analysis of mine leaves some scope for this to be, something other than, something other than a scam. But very often in our world in the 21st century, meditation is a scam, precisely because it's being packaged and sold as something it's not. And there is, and it's an overused term. Cognitive dissonance is overused. But a lot of Buddhists struggle with cognitive dissonance because whatever meditation practice they're doing, they know is not squared with the ancient authentic form of meditation recorded in the texts. And then what they're looking for in terms of outcomes, the religious experience they want to have, is maybe fundamentally un-Buddhist. You know what I mean? What some people want to have telepathic superpowers. I've read autobiographies where people admitted that they got involved with meditation because they wanted to have supernatural powers. And many traditions of Buddhism will promise you that. Tibetan Buddhism and what have you. They thought it would make them smarter. That's very human but very pathetic. They thought, well, if I work out at the gym, I get stronger. If I work out in meditation, I'll get smarter. I'll gain these cognitive abilities. They may believe that in a pseudoscience sense, or they may believe it in a more supernatural and religious sense. But the Buddha didn't promise you any of this. This is not the meditation he taught. This is not the purpose of meditation as he taught it. So a lot of people are walking around with a kind of broken heart about their own religion and their own faith, and they can't be honest with themselves about how the different pieces don't fit together. That in a sense, what they're believing in is a religion of their own invention, and not a religion that the Buddha taught.
Yeah. My impression of meditation is one of the goals, at least. You mentioned these goals, higher intelligence or telepathic powers. One is just mindfulness or feeling less attached to a situation. So, or just being able to see the broader picture.
Sure.
So I think you are in an interesting position to to discuss these matters with people that are really into Buddhism and meditation, because you didn't come to these I know you really well, and I know that you have a lot of these qualities that people you're very intelligent, you're able to be very objective and rational about things, and that you didn't come to that through meditation,
Right.
I don't know. So that was partly why I was just interested in asking this, because I don't know, to me it's just really impressive how you're able to stay so grounded.
Well, I just say people don't see that about me on YouTube to some extent, because on YouTube I do kind of clown around to some extent. It's true. And if anything, I wallow in some of my emotions here. And as a middle-aged person, I wallow. I have the luxury of wallowing in the emotions of my character. I don't shut it out or what have you. But it's true. I'm a very detached person, and that has sometimes come up in violent and stressful situations in real life. It's true. And it's true that's not a product of meditation. So as soon as we state what the desiderata of meditation are, so meditation, if someone's undertaking meditation in order to achieve these qualities you mentioned, but it could be any list of qualities or any list of objectives, we can then look at the mechanics of what the meditation is and what it's supposed to be.
Right.
So to give a definite historical example, meditation as described by Buddhaghosa. Buddhaghosa is the commentator on the Pali Canon. He wrote what are called the commentaries. So Buddhaghosa is not the same person as the Buddha. They're two different historical figures. But he has meditation practices where you sit in a room with a human skeleton and look at the skeleton. He has meditation practices where you sit outdoors in the sunlight with a dish of water, and then you remove the water and you just visualize the absent water. Where you sit with a dish of earth in the sunlight and stare at the earth and then remove the earth. He outlines these meditation practices. Why? Why would that help you if you go through those practices? Just honestly ask yourself. We can test it scientifically. Why would that help you deal with a circumstance such as a police officer being insulting and demeaning towards you? And I just say that's a really good example, because a lot of people, even if you think it's not going to bother you, to have a police officer in a position of authority insult you and demean you and treat you roughly, a lot of people, they weren't expecting it, but it really gets to them and they really get furious or and there's a lot there. Like in some ways it's relating to the schoolyard bully, in some ways it's relating to your school teacher, because this is someone in authority and maybe you were expecting or demanding to be, maybe implicitly a certain level of respect you feel is accorded to you. A situation like that. But those are the real world situations where detachment matters, right? How could that possibly be related to sitting and staring at a skeleton, staring at a dish of water, and so on? Now, Buddhaghosa's meditation is not the same as what the Buddha says about meditation, the jhanas in the actual Pali Canon. As I said in a recent video, that's really, transcendental in the sense of there's a hallucinatory component to it of actually seeing your past incarnations and of having these kind of almost indescribable visions of the sphere of formless things and what have you. Tell me, what does the sphere of formless things look like? What is the sphere of neither form nor non-form look like? There's this sequence of spheres. Even the translation sphere, by the way, is very peculiar if you're looking at the original Pali. But anyway, your mind is elevated up above the heavens and above the gods. And indeed, you're supposed to be able to go up and talk to the gods. You're supposed to be able to teleport yourself up to the heavens and have conversations with Brahma and Indra. And that's Pali Canon's full of that. It's full of these kinds of supernatural dialogues between Buddhist monks and deities, supernatural deities, as well as magical beings here on earth like yetis and demons. But anyway, so that is a very rich mythological tradition. How would it be connected to, the real world situation of this police officer as being denigrating to me, and you feel so angry, or you lose control, if you lose your detachment, or any other example of that? Why? Why would one help the other, even if we uncritically believe in what the religious text is telling us about meditation? Mm-hmm. So again, maybe to come back to my earlier point, we'll wrap it up with this video. It's already past 20 minutes. But, I said earlier briefly that if I were to contrast sort of the first half of my period as a Pali scholar to the second half, one of the differences was earlier on, I was open to the fact, I thought I was going to get out in the field, do field work, do like anthropological research, and I was going to meet Buddhist monks who had the nirvana experience, who had the experience of meditating and experiencing the jhanas and the different levels, and who had maybe, whether you think of it as a hallucination or a dream or whatever, who had seen their prior incarnations, and that this was a dream that, although from my perspective only a dream that was of great historical significance, because people had it again and again. They had it 2,000 years ago, they had it 500 years ago, and this was still happening. This was a part of the human experience that people could still have today. And again, that's only assuming this experience exists in the same sense that LSD exists or that dreams exist. There's a scientific sense in which dreams exist, and there's a sense in which dreams are nevertheless unreal. We could say the same about these other things. And for sure, there was a subtle but profound change when I realized that no, this experience is not even something that exists. This is a myth in the truest sense of the meaning of the word mythology. And that sadly for 2,500 years, all kinds of different people, whether they hallucinated or not, whether they meditated or not, in different ways they were groping around to reproduce this mythological experience. And they couldn't even have it. That there are no Buddhist monks today who even have the nirvana experience as it's written out in the ancient texts. And that, I think, is the reason why in every generation there is so much innovation. There are always new forms of meditation coming out, because people in these positions of religious authority want to compensate for what they're lacking. They're not having the nirvana experience themselves. They're not able to deliver that to their parishioners. So instead, they come up with something like the Mahasi Sayadaw, experience. Mahasi Sayadaw was a meditation leader, and he came up with this totally original notion, like having meditators sit and drink really slowly, analyze what the drink tastes like, also eating food in slow motion and walking in slow motion. And, supposedly you're supposed to realize that although the drink seems to be delicious or the food seems to be delicious, when you slow it down and analyze it into its components, you realize this is an illusion and it actually neither tastes good nor bad, and this is supposed to be an insight into reality. Okay, so that's a totally new philosophy, totally new meditative practice that has nothing to do with what the Buddha taught and is in a very real sense un-Buddhist. But that was an experience he could have, and he could teach, and he could share with others. And that's what everyone's groping around for in this religion. It's exactly because the nirvana experience is not available, is not real, is not something that people are experiencing, that they're desperately looking for something to substitute for it, to supplant it with. And that's why meditation means different things to different people in different cultures, and why even now, there's this constant source of innovation for the profound experience nobody is having. And that's it. Nirvana is a myth that is much more meaningful than Noah's Ark. It's much more meaningful than Moses going up to the top of the mountain and taking down the tablets. It's a myth, that promises you that the riddle to the meaning of life, and indeed to the cosmology of the universe, gods and men, angels and demons, the living and the dead, this great cycle of reincarnation, that the riddle to all of this can be understood by you if only you can comprehend the nature of desire itself and tear up desire by its roots. And then you're going to have this world-shattering insight, this transcendental experience. And that's not true. And it's never been true.